Identifying seventh chord inversions is easy once you know the visual cue that they always give us. So here's a root position chord. It's, as usual, a root position chord. Everything's very symmetrical. Root, fifth, seventh, everything's on a line, or in the case of the lowest note being on a space, everything's on a space. Easy to find root position chords. The root is always the lowest note. When you invert it, the root just moves, and the root becomes, in this case, I've inverted it once, it became the top note. Well, if I keep inverting it, the root will still be in this visual location that's easy to spot. And the location is that it's on what we would term as the top note of the second, which is created when you invert a seventh chord. Okay, you always have this clump of notes. So the trick is that when you see an inverted seventh chord, if you look at the place where there's a clump, where there's a second, and simply zero in on the top note of that clump of notes, or the top note of that second, that will be the root of the chord. Okay, so let's try a different one. I'm going to do an entirely different chord, not a C major 7. Let's put it into practice. So we see that there's a clump of notes. It's down at the bottom. We go to the upper note of that. That's an F, and that means that this is in fact an F major 7 chord. To prove it, we will respell it over here. I'm going to put the F on the bottom. I'm going to put the A above that. I'm going to put the C above that. And I'm going to put the E, which is currently the lowest note of this chord voicing. I'm going to put it up an octave. And you'll see we get a root position F chord. F, in this case, F major 7, because there's no sharps or flats. There it is. Pause the video and see if you can figure out what is the root of this chord. And then tell the name of it. Remember, there's no sharps or flats. And the answer is that it's a G7 chord. We know it's G because the G is the upper note of the clump. If I'm going to look at it over here, if we bring up the other notes, get everything in order, that we have a root position G chord in the key of C, that would be a G7 chord. Now, the final question is, what do we call these chords? We would take into account what the bass player is doing. So if the bass player is actually playing a G in the bass, if that's bass clef, then it would be a G7 chord. But if the bass player, or if there's no bass player, just the piano player, is playing the inversion like this with an alternate note in the bass, then you put that alternate note in your chord symbol. So this would be G7 over D. Still a G7 chord, but it's G7 over D. And then its analysis would reflect that too. This, as shown here, the 5-7 chord with a G in the bass, root in the bass, it would just be a simple G7, a 5-7. But if the same group of notes was played with the D in the bass, it would be G7 over D. It would be 5-7 over its fifth. And notice we indicate the fifth with an Arabic number.